Testing 1, 2. All right, so I am back here for one last inspirational post here. Let's just wait for the YouTube. All right, we are live. All right, so hi guys, here I am again. We are going to do one more podcast, and this one is called Get Over Yourself. Hi guys, my name is Donnie Rouse, and you are listening to the podcast One Life. Get Over Yourself. You want to take on a new endeavor, but you have a big fear of failure. So the question is, how do you overcome that fear of failure? I believe that often that fear of failure is just getting it blatantly wrong, right? Doing it bad for the first time, getting judged for that first draft. And rather than go into the questions, I'm just going to kind of go into a story to help you think about your experiences a little bit differently. Think about any new endeavor you go to, any new skill you want to acquire, any knowledge you want to obtain, anything you want to learn. This is going to be something to get you over that hurdle of just starting. Because so many people, they stop because they're just afraid of the very first thing not going right. So you've probably heard of the saying "shitty first draft," and the point of the shitty first draft was that the shitty first draft it's never like the final draft, right? It's a shitty first draft, but the point is that you got it out. You put out the first draft. The share I'm going to give you today is called "Shitty First Shot." Of course, I'm referring to espresso. And this one goes back to, I was listening to Simon Sinek. So Simon Sinek is one of my favorite influencers. In this podcast, he was talking to Brené Brown, and they were talking about shitty first drafts. They use the metaphor for shitty first pancake, saying that, whenever you make a pancake, the first one is never completely has that perfect round shape, but like maybe not even the second. But the third pancake and the fourth can't even speak. Pancake usually come out perfect. As I was running on the treadmill, I was listening to this conversation they were having, and I was like, that's so funny, because it's the same thing with espresso. I just think of my life in terms of coffee. So I was thinking about espresso and how whenever I make a shot of espresso, like rarely, in like once in a very, very blue moon, does the first shot come out perfectly, right? The machine, I turn the machine on, it's heated up to the right temperature, and now I'm dosing the shot, I'm pulling it off. Very rarely does it pull right the first time. Sometimes it does, but more often than not, it does not. But I don't beat myself up over it, right? I go back, I grind more coffee, I stick the portafilter in on the grinder, dose a shot, tamp it, and I go again. Sometimes I will even pull, no bullshit, sometimes I will go in and I will pull 20 shots before I get one that I am willing to drink. A little bit of coffee snobbery there. But then why is it any different with your life and the things that you want to have as a result, right? Like the skills you want to learn, the talents you want to have, the job you want to have, the business you want to start. Why is it any different? It is not different, right? Because there's this expectation for things to be perfect the first time around. If you talk to anybody who's successful, they'll tell you that is just not the reality of it. It is the result of the failures that you actually, the thing that they want to build, what looks like perfection now, and that it happened overnight. It is the result of all these failures that they were able to build this, because there is no failure if you don't give up. So I was thinking about how this relates to my life, how it relates to this podcast, how it relates to things like the espresso course that I'm making. Sometimes I would take one step forward, another step back. I would start to do something, then I'd be like, I'd freeze, and I would take a step back because it's not perfect. The most important thing for you to do is just to do the work. Show up and do the work. Shitty first draft or shitty first shot doesn't mean, like a shitty first shot doesn't mean like I put the ground coffee in the portafilter, not measuring it out, and I put a sloppy tamp on it. No, that does not mean that at all, right? Because that is just me pulling a shitty shot, right? I know it's not going to taste good, so why would I even bother doing that in the first place? The same is true of your work. Maybe it's a project you're working on, right? Where your boss is like, you know what? Just give me, or maybe it's a teacher, right? If you're listening to this, you're in school, maybe it's a paper and your teacher's like, just give us a draft. And you're like, you know what? Just throw anything on paper. We'll just throw a bunch of crap on paper. I'll hand it in. It's a first draft, so what does it matter? No. You still have to put forth the effort. You put your best effort forward. And then you revise, right? Because if you don't do that, what you're really doing is you're kind of like chiseling down your self-confidence, your self-worth, right? Anytime you're not putting your best self forward, you're taking away from your self-worth, I believe. So notice that the only way for you to progress is for you to take that first step. And that first step, it's ugly, right? It doesn't always look good. We'll go back to the shot analogy. When I pull it, sometimes the shot pulls in, instead of 30 seconds, sometimes it's pulling in 10 seconds. There's no way in hell I'm drinking that. But I made the first shot, right? Now I know, all right, well, the next shot is going to be better because now I know what kind of adjustments I have to make. Right now I know if I have to grind a little finer, I'll pull the next shot. All right, now it's starting to get closer. It's not quite the time. It's not quite it's not dialed in yet, but then I make one more correction and then it's dialed in. Where is there an area of your life where you've just kind of been sitting on the sidelines because you're afraid of the criticism? You're afraid of putting something out there that might get criticized. You're afraid of it just not being perfect. Or maybe you're doing the work, right? It's already completed. You don't want to put it out there because you're like, no, it's not perfect. Identify that thing in your life. And then I want you to say, one, what is the worst that could happen? Right? I mean, with these shot of espresso, the worst thing is I dump it out and I learn that I have to make an adjustment and I do a new one. All right, I pull a new shot. I modify and then I do it better the next time. The same is true for your life. If it's a first draft, you get another shot, right? The teacher is going to, if you're submitting a paper, the teacher is going to correct it. You're going to get corrections back and feedback for how to make it better. And then third, let's go back in our lives. We're going to do a time machine, right? I'm snapping my fingers now. You heard it. And I just literally transported you back to one of the hardest experiences that you've had, right? Where you had to maybe complete a deadline, like an assignment for a deadline, whatever it may be. I want you to think through the process of, putting it out there and having to do revisions. And ask yourself this question: was the final draft better than your first revision or your first draft? Was it better than the second revision? So it's just accepting the fact that you don't have to be perfect. The most important thing for you to do is just to do the work and to put it out there, right? Because as long as the idea is floating in your head, it's only in your head. If you're trying to impact people, you're not impacting anybody, right? Because the ideas, all the stuff is just in your mind. You got to put it down there. You got to put it out in the world, get the feedback, and make it better. I hope you guys enjoyed this rant, as well as I thought it was kind of clever putting it with the coffee because I get very frustrated when I pull a shitty shot of espresso. Sometimes I give up. Sometimes I make a bad shot of espresso in the morning. I'm like, you know what? Screw this. I'm not having coffee. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes it does happen. And, but then the next day I go back and I'm right there pulling more shots of espresso because I love it. And what I want to share with you is that the only way forward, the only way to move forward and to make yourself better and to perfect whatever it is you're doing is by doing that shitty first shot. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope you got some tidbit of knowledge. You were able to relate to it in some way and apply it to something that you're experiencing. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider subscribing to the One Life Podcast. You could do so by visiting my website, www.donnyraus.com, DONNYRAUS.com. There you can also ask a question or send a comment. That is all I got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thank you so, so much for tuning in. Remember, you get one life. Live it. God bless, and I will see you again soon.